Hey everybody, this is Joe Payne for another Political Pain here today. Sorry if there's some noise in the background. I've been hearing a jackhammer go off and on. My lighting's a little off. Usually I have more natural light pouring in. But California looks like Mordor right now because of all the fires we're having. Orange and red skies. Pretty apocalyptic. But right now I want to do a video on that. Not this one. I want to talk today a bit about San Luis Obispo, California, some local news for the Central Coast, and a Black Lives Matter rally, and the fallout from that, and how one protester, Tianna Arata, was targeted by the SLO police department. Look to my previous videos. I did an interview with some protesters who were there that day, trying to document some of the dishonesty from the SLO police department and other police agencies, where they just kind of mischaracterized events, surrounding this protest. And then it ended with the culminating with the SLO PD arresting Tianna Arata, a 20-year-old activist, and basically just trying to throw the book at her. They tried to charge her with 5 felony counts and then a bunch of misdemeanors. And there's recently been charges filed by the district attorney, Deanna. Going to talk about that. But I also just want to talk about San Luis Obispo and its reputation, and what we know about this city. And I want to make things very clear from the outset. I'm not blanketing all of San Luis Obispo or San Luis Obispo residents. I'm not trying to crap on the whole town. I've actually worked in San Luis Obispo for years. I live in Santa Maria, which is about a half hour south. I'm going to talk near the end of the video about some of my personal experiences with SLO, as it's called, San Luis Obispo, SLO, SLO, and just things regarding racism that I've witnessed, that I've seen, and my own personal thoughts and feelings. But really, I want to talk about if you know anything about San Luis Obispo, you know that it has this reputation of being here's this video that's used, I believe, to kind of attract people to work there. And it's considered the happiest city in America. Oprah famously dubbed it this years ago, and then several magazines went with this as well and just said, San Luis Obispo, it's this picturesque, amazing city. That right there is not San Luis Obispo. That's really close to it. It's the beach. But there's all these magazines have said it's the happiest place in the USA. It's a fantastic place to live. It's full of adventure. SLO has been characterized sometimes as being a bubble, and it's a college town. Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is there. And so, there's progressive politics. The mayor, Heidi Harmon, is very progressive. She's taken carbon neutrality as one of the things she's pushing for as mayor. And it has a cute downtown area. It's very bike friendly. There's tons of coffee shops. And it's just considered this great place to live. It's got all these hiking trails and different outdoor, activities for you to do. And, it's just, there's this idea of SLO as this fantastic place. But for people of color and, for people from outside that community, their experience there isn't always that great. And, part of it is, if as far as people of color, San Luis Obispo, by the numbers, it's 84.19% white. And then the largest minority group is Asian folk at 5%, and then black people make up only like 2.2% of San Luis Obispo. So it's a very white area. So is San Luis Obispo County in general. And it's important to know that, on the day that Tianna Arata was arrested, the protest that she was leading, she's being, charged with trying to incite a riot, false imprisonment for blocking traffic, for blocking the movement of cars because they were marching in the street. They also blocked Highway 101. There was a conflict with a car. I'm not going to relitigate that. Go to my last video, the interview with the 2 protesters who were there and witnessed it to kind of see what everything that went on there. But, it's important to remember that the day that Tianna Arata and a lot of these young Black Lives Matter activists took to the street, they were doing it in response to SLO County Sheriff, San Luis Obispo County Sheriff Ian Parkinson, his statements that he made to a local Tea Party group, a Republican Tea Party group, where he said that systemic racism wasn't a problem in San Luis Obispo County. And he said, that problem might be some other places, but it's just not here. And that has been kind of a talking point, I've heard at least, or seen a lot on social media in regards to San Luis Obispo, that we don't have these problems here. The George Floyd didn't have anything to do with San Luis Obispo, and just trying to really deny that any systemic racism or anything like that would play into politics and law enforcement out here in San Luis Obispo County. Subsequent events have shown that's just not the case. First of all, Tianna Arata is targeted, pretty heavily. She's being blamed for crimes she didn't commit, or incidents she didn't instigate or wasn't responsible for, just because she was a organizer of the rally. And she was supposed to have had and I want to go in. There's a few aspects here before we even get to the district attorney. Part of why Tianna is being blamed for the protest getting out of hand is she had a direct texting relationship with the San Luis Obispo Police Department Chief Deanna Cantrell. Now, and Cantrell, sent her a text after there had been incidents with cars charging into protesters, and yes, a back window of a car got smashed that may or may not have had a child in the back, but this car was pushing into protesters. Again, look to my last video. And Deanna Cantrell had sent Tianna a text, "Trust goes both ways," or something like to that effect. And then after the protest was winding down, that's when Tianna was swarmed by protesters. Another protester from my town, Santa Maria, Elias. Oh man, I'm blanking on his last name. He was arrested for resisting arrest. He was kind of thrown to the ground by a SLO police department officer, and I guess he kicked the guy in the groin. Elias kicked the officer, so he's facing some charges for that as well. But Tianna was really blamed for inciting a riot and doing all these things. And it's kind of interesting because Deanna Cantrell is mired in her own scandal right now that really questions her trustworthiness. And it really is fascinating. So I'm trying to open the browser here with the story. But so Deanna Cantrell last year, quite some time ago, or it seems now, I know time moves really strangely these days, but she left her gun in the bathroom of an El Pollo Loco restaurant. I'm a fan of El Pollo Loco. They got good chicken. You can never get enough good chicken, especially if it's not fried. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Deanna Cantrell left her gun in the bathroom of the San Luis Obispo El Pollo Loco. Walked off, went about her business, later realized what she'd done, but the gun had already been picked up by somebody who found it. That person, I believe, attempted to report that they had found the gun the next day. I don't know if they saw what went on. It's believed I believe he has developmental disabilities. But there was this big scandal, and now an attorney has just filed a suit because he's alleging that Deanna Cantrell and the SLO Police Department, what really happened was they believed really that a certain person had stolen this gun, or they reported it as stolen. That's the weird thing. The SLO PD reported on their Facebook page someone's in possession of a stolen dangerous firearm. Didn't say it had been left by a police department by accident. It's really a found firearm. It's not quite stolen. And they posted this person they believed that it was. And in this suit, this attorney alleges that really what happened was a Morro Bay, which is a nearby town, a Morro Bay police officer after looking at the security footage, kind of thought it looked like such and such guy. And they put up his, picture as being, this guy was supposed to be on probation, as being involved in this, picking up her gun or having her gun. And it turns out it wasn't that guy at all. And the SLO PD went through the SLO sheriff's office, which is the county law enforcement agency, because this person's house was in county, it was outside city limits, just outside SLO city limits in county territory. So they got a search warrant through the SLO county sheriffs, got them the info or whatever. However it works, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, of course, but they did this very quickly. And they stormed this person's house. It was a man and a woman. They had a child there. And they didn't find the gun because it wasn't there. But they did find allegedly some methamphetamine and other things. They had apparently observed from just staking out the house that it appeared dangerous to children. And they did know that the individual and his partner had a child. And so, this person is now like being charged with child endangerment and had their child taken away. Even though the only reason that this warrant was served or anything was because of some bumbling. This attorney suit also says that the police chief covered up evidence. That she made multiple calls from her private cell phone, which you're not supposed to do. There is a lot here, but here's the suit. And this is from a story of the SLO New Times. Full disclosure, I used to work for the San Luis Obispo New Times Media Group. I was the managing editor and arts editor for a time for The Sun in Santa Maria. But they were under the umbrella of the New Times. So here it is. Oh, I lost it. So let me do that again. So they have in this a little bit of back and forth between these two deputies. This is recorded. These are SLO County deputies talking about the SLO PD. Deputy 1 says, "Yeah, call me a cynic." And this is about the search for the firearm at this person's house. "Yeah, call me a cynic, but I don't have total confidence in the fact that they've worked this all out all the way through. You know what I mean?" Deputy 2, "Oh no, absolutely. That's why I told him, quote, well, you know what? At this point, time is on your side, so let me call my chief before I authorize that." Deputy 1, "And it's fine if they got authorization for a probation search and they're going to do it that way. That's fine. But it sounds like the only thing they got hanging on this guy was that the next one into the head and after her. Or was the next one into the head, meaning bathroom, after her." Deputy 2, "That's it. That's all they have." Deputy 1, "Yeah, okay. Then just make sure Sandra understands we're just there to keep the peace, and that's it, okay." It ended up being, I don't believe the SLO sheriffs were present at the raid that the SLO PD did. Deputy 2, "Do you want me to send a page up or anything?" Deputy 1, "Don't send a page because of the sensitive nature of it." Deputy 1, "Yeah, I'll leave it out of the log too." "Yeah, that's fine." Let's see. They end up saying, this is SLO sheriff's office discussing after they didn't find the gun at the raid. And here's what I wanted to find. SLO Sheriff's Office Watch Commander, "Well, and that's why I called you, because I'm like, I've dealt with SLO PD enough to know that whatever they're telling me, only a fraction of it is going to be correct." So that's a bit of an indictment. That's from fellow law enforcement, just not trusting the accuracy of the SLO PD. And we have SLO Police Chief Deanna Cantrell, as I said before. She, kind of basically engaged in a type of a cover-up, to during this whole situation. Used her private cell phone. They went after this person because they thought he looked like the guy who went in after her into the bathroom. It wasn't the same person at all. And in fact, the person they went and raided had a beard, and the person in the video didn't. So that's a whole thing about the trustworthiness of police. And now, she's basically trying to skip town. SLO Police Chief takes step up to new job in Fairfield. This is in the Paso Robles Daily News. Paso Robles in SLO County to the north. So, this is really, kind of speaks to the issues regarding, we were told systemic racism, and there was no problem in SLO County with law enforcement. And while you couldn't point to racism, in this fiasco with her gun, because all the people they raided and involved were white. Again, it's a very white area. Here we see the SLO PD just being very dishonest, covering stuff up, covering their own butts, covering the chief's butt. And then when they have a big Black Lives Matter rally, which is targeting law enforcement for reform, they go after one single black organizer and throw the book at her, and try to basically just put everything they possibly can, every charge they possibly can, which in my opinion, blocking traffic, yeah, it's annoying, but is it false imprisonment? Does Tianna Arata deserve it was something crazy, like up to 30 years, the number of felonies if full, charges were met. Now, obviously, law enforcement know the game they're playing, and they throw the heaviest charges so that, the DA takes those the investigation, and they actually apply the charges. And so that, the PD will start with the heaviest possible crimes they can think they can prove, and that's to intimidate the person, and hopefully they'll take a plea deal. Now, Dan Dow, the district attorney of San Luis Obispo, when he dropped charges on Tianna, there were no felonies. They were all misdemeanors, but there's like 5 of them, including the false imprisonment, which, again, blocking traffic's annoying, I know, but to call it false imprisonment, I believe is a stretch. I'm sure there's law people and lawyers and legal authorities that could, argue with me on that. That's fine. But again, there was the SLO PD famously released footage of saying, we're looking for a victim of vandalism, and it was a car pushing into protesters. And only after the car struck protesters did they start hitting the car, including Tianna, with like her flagpole and stuff like that. So that was like considered, vandalism, and I don't know if it was assault or whatever. But so, this has been a very controversial case. No doubt. Tianna's facing 5 misdemeanors, and there have been multiple protests following this. The day the charges were dropped, there was a protest, and now every time that these protests have happened, there have been counter protesters, protectors or pro law enforcement, back the blue, whatever. There's been several of those locally, to kind of go against the Black Lives Matter protesters, and they really don't like Tianna Arata. They've called her a terrorist. There have been death threats against her. She during the protest, she did stomp on an American flag, which is not a crime. But for these protesters, that is, that's a crime. They think is worthy of imprisonment and or death. I've seen it said in the comment sections. Facebook is a cesspool, people. I don't think I needed to tell you that. But so Dan Dow, this is really interesting. There was like more than 500,000 signatures. Free Tianna got a lot of attention. Famous activists, even like musical artists brought attention to this, and hashtag Free Tianna was trending on Twitter, so it got a lot of attention. And there was more than 500,000 signatures gathered to try to tell the SLO district attorney Dan Dow to, like, hey man, like, this is crazy that you're going after this girl, it's not right. And activists have tried to deliver those signatures, that petition, to the district attorney several times. They wouldn't take it when they brought it in person. They've mailed it out several times. That those they've been returned. The mail-ins have been returned, and it's really interesting. And he's basically saying, this is a thing where I can't be swayed by the public perception. Now that's really interesting to me, because Dan Dow definitely has shown that he does care about the public perception. After Black Lives Matter resurged after the death of George Floyd and these protests, especially locally, happened, Facebook, all these groups started popping up. Protect, insert town name here, and one of them is Protect Paso Robles, and which is again is a city to the north. It's almost like the Santa Maria of SLO County. It's a much larger city, but it's spread out. It's agricultural town, a lot of farm work and farm workers up there, and much more. It's a more blue collar town, more affordable to live in. Very hot. That's the other thing. That's part of why it's more affordable. So Dan Dow felt the need to go on the Protect Paso Facebook page to explain himself, because the right wing, and he's conservative. I'm going to get to that more in a minute. But he felt that he needed to explain himself to the right-wing members of his community, of the Protect Paso group. And again, San Luis Obispo and Paso Robles were all victim to multiple conspiracy posts about busloads of Antifa are going to come and disrupt these protests and destroy property. It happened multiple times. Law enforcement fell for it. The Paso Robles police department chief had to give a statement to the city council about that. That's just been going on this whole time. So that's part of what spurs on these Protect Pasos, Protect pages, and Protect Paso is one of them. And so Dan Dow felt the need to explain why he didn't drop felonies on Tianna Arata, doesn't feel the need to engage with the petitioners, 500,000 people, but he does feel the need to do this with Protect Paso. And so, he's saying, I keep hearing there's a group of people who are upset I did not file felony charges. I'm writing to provide some legal context and explanation. The law does not support felonies being prosecuted for conduct in this case, even though that may seem hard to believe to someone who has seen the publicly available video. So again, stomping on American flag, it's not a crime. Tianna Arata hit a car with a flagpole after it charged into protesters. They blocked traffic. One car did have its back window bashed in. She wasn't involved. She didn't do that herself. She wasn't involved in that. So again, it's like inciting a riot and all this type of stuff. Now listen to this. Our laws are written by however, please remember, our laws are written by the super majority in Sacramento, Democratic Party. They have been decriminalizing everything since 2011, beginning with AB 109. And we, the voters, passed Prop 47 and Prop 57. And since then, the legislation has continued to water down our criminal law. Please know there's a very different legal standard for the arrest versus the standard for filing charges in court and obtaining a conviction. He goes on. There's more here. This is interesting to me because, again, this is a little bit of the insight. He's just showed his ass, people. He's just, proven that partisan politics is to play here. Like he's complaining about the Democratic majority in California passing laws to decriminalize everything. I'm going to show you a video in a second that kind of speaks more to this. So I understand people's frustrations with the criminal justice system. I, along with a number of elected DA colleagues, am constantly trying to educate the community on all the problems caused by justice reform and what we need to fix many of the problems in the law. Sadly, it often feels like we are shouting into a black hole. Ooh, unfortunate wording, and no one can hear us. I will never give up or surrender on the important issue of public safety. So, Dan Dow is really kind of, really letting the Protect Paso people know how he feels, and that this is how they feel about justice reform, criminal justice reform. They see it as that there is a belief in law enforcement, not all law enforcement, of course, but there is a widespread belief about criminality that people, if you're a criminal, you're a criminal. And it's part of why they don't like when California releases inmates because of prison overcrowding, because we live in a prison industrial complex. We have mass incarceration in the United States, and California releases people for nonviolent offenses, and especially during coronavirus, more and more people are being released just for their own health and safety, so they don't get coronavirus, they don't get infected in the jails. That's a whole issue. I don't, we can argue one way or back and forth on that. I know it's controversial. I'm not going to just think, hey, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. It's, it's you're balancing public safety in a lot of ways there. But let's talk about Dan Dow and his idea of public safety, because he gave a talk on the 4th of July. Oh, and this also has to do not just public safety, but also with, being in defiance of the law, civil disobedience, like Tianna Arata engaged in. And he was involved. He gave a talk on the 4th of July this year at Sculptera Winery with this group that was, so Dan Dow's Christian, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sound like Seinfeld. No, there's anything wrong with that. I'm not one. But anyway, there's this issue of coronavirus and churches. And, churches have been ordered to not allow in-sanctuary services because of the spread of coronavirus. And also, and these are all guidelines, that there has been some attempt to prosecute a church in the LA area that wasn't successful. But also with the issue of singing, like congregational singing, because there was a super spreader event in Seattle that got a bunch of people sick at a choir practice. One person had coronavirus, and they're all standing around, singing, expelling tons of, moisture into the air, their own droplets, and got a bunch of people sick. So that's the issue. Public safety. Sorry, churches. Whatever, live stream, Zoom, or just meet outside. Everyone wear masks, right? So I know that's not feasible for everybody. It's a crisis, people. We're living in a crisis. But so this is what Dan Dow had to say. And let's hear from, I apologize for the music. This was posted by a guy who is, very, and this is like a God and country type of crowd, okay? And, again, law enforcement is a political institution. If you don't think so, well, here's just one example of it. But let's hear what Dan Dow thinks. He's going to kind of mention Black Lives Matter peripherally, I believe. Or let's just hear. There's also a CHP, the guy that talks after him. But listen to this.
People, and I'm proud that each one of us has our right to worship in the way that we want to, and our getting back to right being wrong, wrong being right. Our state over the last few years is letting out people out of prisons early back into our communities, and especially right now. But yet our governor wants to make it a crime to worship and praise God in church by singing to our Almighty God. And that to me is an example of where right has become wrong and wrong has become right. And I'll tell you right now, for the first time with a microphone, that by the power vested in me as District Attorney of San Luis Obispo County, I declare San Luis Obispo County a sanctuary county for worship and praise.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Dan. When we're releasing the real criminals into our community, but we're trying to criminalize those that are dedicated to exercising their First Amendment rights, we've gone wrong. And I won't allow that to happen in San Luis Obispo County while I'm the district attorney.
Very ironic, criminalizing First Amendment rights, right? Like, I don't know, protests. The freedom of religion is very important. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says during a public health crisis, we can't, you're not going to go to jail. You're not being criminalized just for the act of going to church or worshiping. That's a bad faith argument. It's because it's a threat to public safety. In South Korea, one of the big spreader events was a person who went to a religious, like a church that I can't remember the name of it. Went to this church and got a bunch of people infected, and they spread out. And then she went to another one. It's, especially indoor, enclosed, prolonged periods of time, it's dangerous. People go to church, they're there for several hours, all in one enclosed space. And there are people talking, there's people singing. It's all a threat to public safety. I don't really have time for the arguments about, well, we can line up to go to this and that, or we can't go to church. Churches can set up outside. That's not an issue. But how ironic. So, DA, District Attorney Dan Dow does not want to, he doesn't want to, he will not see First Amendment rights be criminalized. But that's exactly what's going on with Tianna Arata. They're making an example of her. And that's what this is about. And it really illustrates the institutional conservatism in San Luis Obispo County. There are just a lot of Republicans in San Luis Obispo County. The last House of Representative election in 2008, it was like one of the first times that SLO County went Democratic, not by much, for the House. And, you could blame Trump for that, the blue wave and all that. So this is really fascinating, but this also, kind of talks to the SLO County and the SLO area's own kind of issues with racism. And it's not just anecdotal, evidence that I have, which I will share in a minute, but, Cal Poly is like the whitest public, Cal State, by the numbers, and it's had a number of issues of scandals or whatever you want to call them over the years. The night that I believe it was election day or the day after election day in 2008, when it's Barack Obama, the first black American to be elected president. At the Cal Poly Ag House, there's housing for ag students. It's called the Crops House. Somebody hung again, this is SLO New Times. This is reporting from the time. They hung a Confederate flag, and I don't know if you can see that, but there's also a noose hanging from the. Let me see if I can. My little. I'm in the way there, aren't I? So yeah, there's a noose hanging from the. Let me try. There it is. There's a noose hanging from the frickin' Crops House, along with a Confederate flag. So super classy, Ag House and Cal Poly. So that's not, you could say, oh geez, you're just picking out one thing, but Cal Poly made national, worldwide news. This is the BBC.com and BBC News. The blackface scandal that rocked my campus. There's actually been multiple blackface incidents at Cal Poly where almost entirely white fraternities have, so we're having a gangster party, and then somebody, where we dress up like gangsters, and then somebody shows up in blackface. There's actually been multiple of them. There was one a few years ago where there was a blackface incident, and then like a day, like as there were protests being organized about this blackface, the student wearing blackface, it came out that there was another photo circulating. These things always happen on Snapchat. There was another photo circulating of another Cal Poly student in blackface, and the administration at Cal Poly had been trying to keep that one quiet because they're like, oh, we don't need another one, right? Anecdotally, I mean, I live in Santa Maria, California. Santa Maria, California is a majority Latina city. There's, farm workers here, and it's not, I try to tell people it's a very diverse city, but people here, whatever percent Latino. Oh, it's all Mexicans, right? No, it's not just all Mexicans. We have Salvadorians, we have Peruvians, we have Colombians, we have Cubans, Americans, we have Puerto Rican Americans, all kinds of people. We have Oaxacans who are a lot of farm workers are Oaxacan, migrant farm workers, or just farm workers who lived here for years and years, and so it's whenever, I mean, anybody, a lot of people who I've talked to who are Latina, who go visit SLO have stories about what they've experienced there. And it's not good. It's not good. Go back to Mexico, hey, Santa Maria, and way worse. My wife is first generation Latina American, Mexican American. And, she went to a baseball game, the SLO Blues versus the Santa Maria. Oh gosh, I'm showing my total unattention. Santa Maria A's. Ooh, I don't even remember the name of our college or whatever baseball team, but she went there to support a friend who was there years ago, and a bunch of drunk white dudes in the crowd were calling slurs and saying go back to Mexico and all that stuff. One time, my wife and I and some friends, we were downtown getting pizza. Bunch of rowdy, white dudes came in. I don't know if they were Cal Poly. I'm not going to guess. But, they got angry that we were occupying the table they wanted. and targeted my wife and her friends and said, go back to Mexico and all of that kind of stuff. It's not good. There is, there's this idea of SLO. And again, I'm not trying to blanket everybody. I apologize. There are things I like about San Luis Obispo and everything. But there is a undercurrent and just an outright open racism that I've seen firsthand there. I worked in San Luis Obispo for years, at the newspaper. I go there for production day and spend time in the city. I also worked in a factory there. And one day I had to ask a guy who was from Atascadero in the lunchroom to not use the N-word, a white guy. Like, hey, man, like, I'm not cool with that. Can you not do that? And it became this whole, well, if they can say it, why can't I? And all that, just that dumb stuff. But this attitude, that, it's not a problem, or, they should be grateful. Oh, part of this has cropped up with the kind of like conspiracy mongering around this group Race Matters SLO, where there was this charge that they had been trying to, quote unquote, shake down companies, businesses in the downtown area. And so, they what happened was, a bunch of businesses, downtown businesses, had boarded up their businesses when these protests were happening, the Black Lives Matter protests. And so this group, Race Matters SLO, wanted to get a dialogue with the companies. Like, why'd you do that? They're not busloads of Antifa. We're not violent rioters or looters. We're not here to destroy property, which again has been this meme shared by the right again and again, that's just what's going on. Right. And so, they tried to, start a dialogue, and then a bunch of, again, right wingers just started passing around this BS story that Race Matters SLO had tried to shake down people for money, shake down these businesses, and this is an issue. I'm going to show, or so I'm gonna have to bring up something that I'm being totally aware that could put me in the target of this website and this person. But this is just, I have to do it because it's an issue that needs to be called out. So there's an online outlet in San Luis Obispo called Cal Coast News. And so I'm gonna show, and honestly, they are responsible for sharing a lot of this misinformation. And Race Matters SLO has said they did no such thing. Protesters have said we did no such thing. We didn't go try to shake down businesses for money. But Cal Coast News, which is mostly headed by Karen Velie, who did work for the New Times for a time. I was aware. This is when years and years ago. Anyway, she is not an honest actor. And she's not an honest journalist. She's not a dependable journalist. Posts a lot of hearsay, a lot of, anonymous sources, and without doing her due diligence. You can use anonymous sources in journalism, but you need to do due diligence. So look at this already. This story has a clarification, and an editor's note, all types of hedging, because basically she got a letter from the Race Matters co-founder Courtney Hale, basically saying, hey, I'm going, what you're posting is libelous. You're lying about me. You're lying about my actions. I did no such thing. And so why is that a big deal? Well, because Cal Coast News and Karen Velie, they've been straight up found guilty of libel, even after appeal. And I don't know if you know this, folks, but it's very difficult to prove libel in court. And this was relating to a story about a guy who owned a waste management company. But basically, Karen Velie is very dishonest. And Cal Coast News finds the most incendiary stories that they know will get them clicks, and they found over the years that it serves them to have a conservative bent, to really try to incite conservative anger and fervor, and that last story was a clear example. But Karen Velie, this libel verdict, they're found guilty. I can't remember if it was like $1 million they have to pay to the guy. I don't even know how their business is still solvent at this point. We just saw an ad from Spencer's Market, which makes me question going there. But so it's just really fascinating that Cal Coast News has been the source of so much of this, quote unquote news about Tianna Arata, about the protests. They allege protesters attacked one of their journalists with no video evidence, that he was battered. I just find Karen Vealie's been at war with everybody. I'm just another person. Who knows if she'll come after me. It wouldn't surprise me if she tried to whatever, post some story about me. But it's this is where we find ourselves in San Luis Obispo County. I'm just trying to illustrate and San Luis Obispo, the city. I'm just trying to show you and illustrate some of what's been going on there, some of the reality. I remember, if you look back to my interview I did with 2 protesters, Leah said something that I found really interesting. And she said, I grew up here and I always kind of thought, I bought into it, that this place is different. We don't have these kinds of problems here, like racism or systemic racism or whatever. She was like, but, that's because there are so few people of color here. And when you actually meet the ones who live out here or have had experiences here, it changes your perspective. And now that they're getting loud and voicing their opinion and protesting, we see what happens. Oh, and the other day at an event, here's something. A motorcyclist charged in to protesters who were in a crosswalk. They were not blocking traffic. They're in a crosswalk. They still have the light. The light turns yellow. And here comes a motorcyclist, charges into a girl. Okay. This guy had made multiple posts on social media about how he disliked the protesters. Said something needs to do something about them. And, he went and filed a police report apparently just after this with the San Luis Obispo PD, and the San Luis Obispo PD, released a statement. We have, the person did come to the department to turn themselves in, or to file a report is actually what they said. But this person filed a report that protesters attacked him. That he was all, and then he later posted on social media, they tried to knock me off my bike. And I mean, if there isn't a clearer example of how things are being twisted and manipulated by the right, by someone who really does not like these protesters, and then charges into them with a vehicle, and then plays the victim. Tries to say, oh, they attacked me. There isn't a clear example of the game that's being played here. I really don't know what is. I don't know. This shows, and who knows how the SLO PD is going to respond to these charges, right? And the SLO PD, we saw the thing about Deanna Cantrell earlier. The SLO PD doesn't have a sterling reputation. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, like 2-3 years ago, the SLO PD got into hot water because this is a big story the New Times did. I remember when this all happened. A SLO PD detective got on the phone with a New Times journalist. They were asking specifically about rape. Like, there are a lot of reported rapes in SLO, but not that many go to court, and not that many are lead to convictions. And this SLO PD, a male officer, said, well, to be honest, with the college involved, a lot of these girls get drunk and they conjure up that they were raped. He said that, conjure. And it was very controversial, and it really, I mean, the SLO PD was kind of on its heels for a while after that, and didn't want to talk to the New Times, didn't want to answer for that type of stuff. If we go back far enough to people kind of being dissatisfied with the local law enforcement, the case of Kristen Smart. She was a Cal Poly student who went missing. Her body has never been found, and there's it's really troubling case because there was all this investigation done. If y'all want to learn more about it, I recommend the In My Backyard podcast by a guy I went to high school with. His name's Chris Lambert. And this podcast goes into really, it's like a true crime investigation of what happened there, why this investigation fell through the cracks. It's long been considered, it was known who did this crime. And his father might have been involved. His father, I think, was retired SLO County law enforcement. So, there has long been this kind of, I don't want to say it's a reputation or whatever, but there's been a distrust of the local police, and they have been criticized for many different things. I've tried to cover a bunch of them, but the idea that it's just out of the ordinary, or it's this crazy, left-wing anarchist movement to criticize law enforcement. I think that's wrong. I think it's offensive to law enforcement officers who do recognize that there's something not totally right with the institution, and that there's things that can be improved. There's things they shouldn't be responsible for, and that they can do better in investigating certain issues or certain crimes, like sexual assault, and that they can deal with communities of color in a better, more proactive way. So that's the issue. And San Luis Obispo, it's and that's the thing, the bubble has burst, the shine is off the apple. People recognize that SLO, for all the positive PR, it's just like any city in America that has issues. It's got issues. Santa Maria here, we've had issues with gang violence, but we a lot of community leadership has been honest about that, and we've taken measures to meet it. The Central Coast area itself has issues with human trafficking, which I'd like to do a video in the future about, because it's a corridor between the Bay Area and Southern California, the 101 freeway. And law enforcement has done a job to improve how they respond to that. So, that there is pats on the back that they deserve, but they should also be able to take the criticism. And I think that going after Tianna Arata in the way that they did, in the way that the SLO PD and Dan Dow have, and how this is obviously colored by politics, I just think we need to have a conversation about it. We need to be honest about it, and there needs to be some accountability. I hope this, has kept you. I hope this has illuminated some stuff for you. If you're not from San Luis Obispo or the Central Coast, this might just be like, what's the big deal? But I think this is indicative of a lot of what's going on in America around Black Lives Matter and the conversation about police reform and police violence. There's this idea that everybody calling, to defund the police just wants to tear it all down or burn stuff down, when they're really, if you talk to them, they're actually quite well educated. They're, first and foremost, please stop killing us. But then they're also asking for very structural changes, systemic reforms that, can improve. I think could improve public perception of law enforcement, could improve the how law enforcement feel about their job and how they feel about how people feel about them, and it would help. It's a more just society that they're calling for. You can obviously, I'm a lefty, and I definitely see Black Lives Matter as a good thing, as a force for good in our society, to really try to root out systemic inequities and racism and talk about them, force the conversation. We've seen the vast majority of these protests have been peaceful, and we need to be honest about the destruction and the violence, but we also have to be honest about the instigation. Cars plowing into people. There have been protesters killed by cars charging into them, and all other types of instigation and violence. And, just blanketing protesters, which they're members of your community, as terrorists and Antifa thugs and all this. It's not a great thing. It justifies more extreme people, whether they're driving their motorcycles into you, or, the police department who slants conservative, throwing the book at somebody who's engaged in some pretty benign civil disobedience. The 101 had been blocked before that protest in SLO several times. There were like 2 or 3 protests that did that, and things there wasn't this singling out of black leadership of the movement. So that's this political pain. I really went into it today. I think it's important to talk about these things and be honest. I appreciate you being here with me. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, visit Political Pain, consider a donation. Whatever these are tough times. I'm not going to beg, or ask you to open up your purse if it would be a challenge. But any follows or you share this, it really would help me build my channel. And again, this is just, I'm an independent journalist trying to share kind of sober insight into all these things that are going on, and, just help you be informed, help you kind of wade through the weeds of all this crazy information that's going on. So thanks again for being here with me. This has been Joe Payne with Political Pain. See you next time. Thanks.